It's not connected. This is not the other problem. This is not yet the problem. This is not yet even connected. There are other problems in the laptop itself. It's not Now how to take these programs, how to improve your agency program, and I already mentioned to the first group here, okay, that I have listed certain problems that I consider as common problems in these programs, but then you may have some other problems which I have not listed. So then please feel free to think about that now, and then in the end ask questions about it, and we'll see if we can come to some solutions there. And yeah, and we also have these, this is just to mention, we have these international trade facilities magazines here in our annual report. So we hasn't got that yet and wants to have it possibly at the end of the session that it has next problems. So to start with, we need to think about the objectives and of the ABC program, and I consider these as the most common or most important objectives of an ABC program. We want to reduce roaming dog population. We want to reduce the rabies transmission. We want to stop and prevent indiscriminate killing of healthy dogs. We want to increase responsible ownership, and we want to prevent unnecessary suffering. And these topics are quite well covered in the warning system as well, as we were talking about the dog welfare more in general in India. So this is like I mentioned, this is the list of common problems, which I consider common problems. But if you have something else in your mind, in the end we'll talk about that. So lack of public acceptance, lack of resources in different forms, as in staff, facilities, equipment, funds, and technical know-how. We may also have a problem of lack of results and lack of welfare. And I also want to start with some sort of a reality check. Yes, please come. Reality check, which is often possibly lost in the concept of ABC program, is that the total cost of the ABC conservatory program per dog is not 445. It's 445 rupees is the amount that AWBI supports ABC programs, but it is not the overall cost of it. You can't actually do the quality surgery if this is to cover doctors' fees and everything. So we also always have to understand that if you're using if it's a government vet who's doing the program, who's already paid, and this is sort of a municipality corporation program, then obviously the cost per dog will not involve the doctor's salary. But then and then you have the concept of just how much it costs for the medicine and materials. So just be a little critical and understand the issues of what is actually included in the cost and how much it really costs if you have to account for everything. And 445 is for sure not realistic if it's to cover everything. So then to these problems that I listed, lack of public acceptance is I find rather a common problem, and that was mentioned many times in the morning as well. So the way to win the public acceptance is of course to involve the public, to involve the community as much as possible. And then community, that is different, there are different sectors of community. We have the authorities, we have corporations, municipalities, panchayats. You know, they're the people who are actually giving you the blessing to do the work, and they are having the understanding or not having the understanding depending on how you communicate with them. They are the ones who can give orders, you know, and sign the MOU so that you can actually start doing your ABC program. So they have to have the understanding. Now often, because they have so many other issues in their minds, and they are mainly concerned with the human welfare, they will not easily have time necessarily or patience to listen to why we should not kill dogs. And what I find is very important when talking to these kind of higher authorities is to bring the message how this program benefits human welfare, human health and welfare. And that's why they've written that, to have good rating statistics to show that this is the most cost-effective way to prevent human rabies deaths is very important, you know. And obviously always to bring up the issue of rubbish. So that's one thing. So we need to be good terms, and we need to, of course it takes a lot of time. You have to go several times and the person is not there, and you have to go again and again and again. And I think this is the person to tell all about that. It takes a lot of our patience and time to win the trust and acceptance of those authorities, but it's really crucial for the overall success of our program. However, these top people are actually not the ones who can come with you on the field and show or tell you where the dog goes. For me to also be in terms and involve sanitary inspectors, counselors, board members, those who are actually more on the field and then who can get things done. Dog owners is an important part of involving the community. I find it's really important that in the ABC program we operate owner dogs as well. Whether they're pedigree dogs or country dogs, owner dogs has to have to be operated as well, because yes, the unwanted pet dog puppies are supplying the free roaming unwanted dog population, and also because operating pet dog owner dogs is sort of a quality control of your program. You should be able to release the owner dogs home same day after the surgery. And when you have a good number of that kind of owners voluntarily bringing their dogs for your spay neuter center, it means a couple of things. It means that your educational message has reached those people. They have come to understand the benefits of having their dogs neutered. It also means that they have trust for your setup. They have trust for your surgery quality. They have not heard from any bad stories. They have hopefully heard good stories from neighbors, somebody who have had their dogs operated and there was no complications afterwards. So they'll be happy to bring their dogs. So I find this quality assurance through operating owner dogs among our ownerless dogs is really important. Of course, bringing owner dogs to our clinic with a lot of other unknown dogs is always a risk of disease transmission. And it further, of course, it emphasizes the point that we have to make our surgery so well that we can release these dogs as fast as possible, so that we are not incubating dogs, whether they have owners or don't have owners, too long in the shelters, kennels, where the disease transmission pressure is rather high. We've had, unfortunately, some cases where we've had brought owner dogs from further away villages among the ownerless dogs. So it's not that the owner has brought the dog in. In that case, the owner can take it home immediately. But sometimes we have, dog catchers go to some distant far away village. They catch free roaming dogs there. They also bring owner dogs. And then these dogs, unfortunately, we can't be bringing home the same day. It's logistically often difficult just to go for one dog and reach that. So unfortunately, we've had also, even though we're trying to be very careful with that, but we've had a couple of cases where that kind of owner dog has picked up distemper while they leave it. During even those couple of days that we've had to keep it. And that is of course, so there is a certain disease risk, which will of course affect the acceptance, the attitude of the owners. But at the same time, I think it has to be encouraged, the owner dog, and we of course have to manage the disease risk by minimizing the inpatient time that we have for these dogs. And media, statement terms, I think it's really important. In our area, I find that it's rather difficult to get the newspaper reporters to actually come and write stories about that. They won't, but they quite happily help these articles. If I send them photos and if I send them the story, they'll just make it up as if they have interviewed me and they'll put it in the newspapers. And we have to encourage that, and because we need their support in providing proper reports. In terms of not faking up, not sort of going up these issues if somebody is bitten by a dog and then it becomes a massive rabies outbreak, unless we are able to provide them good, proper data and in time, so that that can be avoided. So that is part of the involving community. One thing about a lot of public acceptance is, of course, if you have a poor, if we're not transparent, if public, if we get, if your ABC program has a name of faking reports or if there are any questions arise whether you're doing anything or not. So transparency meaning that you welcome visitors anytime. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you have outsiders, in your operation theater all the time. That of course we should minimize the traffic in our operation theater. This picture I have here, we had an open house in our training facility, and we had 2 professors. This is Dr. Ilona Otter, this is Dr. Ilona from the Veterinary College. And so for that open house, this kind of professors, yes, only we let them to come into the surgery. But I don't let owners come. We have rather big windows on one side, so owners can watch the operations, so they can come and see. From the door they can see that yes, we are active, we're operating every day, and we always welcome them, and always at some point. Of course, sometimes the visit is a bit busy, and people may need to wait a little while. But we try to always make a point to show around any visitor and explain the purpose of our work. So that kind of attitude that you close doors and you say people no to come, it is not certainly working. It doesn't help you in building the public acceptance. So you try to welcome visitors anytime, and obviously then you do reliable reports, audited accounts. We've worked a lot with the Veterinary Association, and I've heard from them that they have the Veterinary Association has made a very strict rule for their members, that anybody any vet who is found to sign false reports in a visit program is held responsible for that, by himself from his own pockets. So that is, I find it's unfortunate that kind of measures have to be taken, to avoid the false reports. But yes, then we have to deal with the situations that is happening, unfortunately, in several places, and not to say that it's happening in your places, but it is one of the problems which has resulted in poor public acceptance of APC programs in general. Some people have the idea, thinking in the back of their minds, that what are these people doing? Are they actually doing it in the work, or are they just making reports? Because there has been incidents of fake reports that have been found out. So then, so that's one thing. You have good reliable reports and always go to the accounts. Staff is really one of the big headaches. I'm sure everybody will share that idea. Lack of good staff is one big problem, and to overcome that problem will certainly improve your program. Now, I find team spirit and sort of sustainability really important, because if we have a high staff turnover, it means that instead of just going efficiently with our work, we need to be training you. And it's always more difficult also with those staff duties that don't require education much, because then we have people who don't really know the work before that, and everything has to be shown so many times before things go the way we want them to go. So we have to work on good team spirit to increase the sustainability of our staff, and that will improve our programs. Motivating wages, of course, is one thing. People have to be motivated, encouraged to work well, and there are different schemes. Some people have some groups I know have different kinds of bonus schemes. What we are doing with our animal handlers is that we give they have a set. It also depends how long they work with us, but they may have a set monthly salary. Then they have also a bonus from catching dogs, so that means that they are motivated to work hard on those days that require a lot of dog catching, but at the same time they are available all the time, because they still have their set wages. I once had a question, somebody from some agency program. She called me asking for, she needed more dog catchers, and then I asked her, and she was asking if I have anybody at hand to send there. I didn't, but anyway, so I asked her about the salary that she was ready to pay, and she said she will pay 25 rupees per dog. Now, obviously, any person, dog catcher, veterinarian, anybody, you need certain basic, you have your living expenses, and you can't, not every day is a dog catching day, If you catch 10 dogs a day and pay 250 rupees, that may be enough for somebody, but you won't do that every day. And so then with that kind of salary, you can't keep anybody in your service and then expect other work than dog catching, because there will be dental cleaning, there will be carrying this and that. There are so many other things that have to happen. So we have to have motivating wages, and that also then of course applies for veterinarians as well. Then staff welfare, it's part of this great sustainability thing, I find. So if we don't provide, if you are, it all depends, of course, your setup, but we are working in an area where we don't have tea shops much around, you know, or going for lunch is not a big deal. It's slightly difficult. If we would tell our staff to go and arrange their own lunch, they would take up 2 hours to that, and that would bring down our efficiency in our working time. So we find that it's better that we provide the lunch. You know, if we are on some field camp, we all go together to a restaurant, and yes, the organization pays for the lunch. Or if we are in our own setup, we have lunch provided and tea provided there. So nobody needs to go somewhere. Nobody needs to start thinking of how much to spend for these expenses. Other thing with the staff welfare, of course, comes there are issues like you know, sort of basic medical healthcare. You know, again, for lower wage staff, you know, somebody falls sick, certain basic healthcare certainly is the responsibility of the organization or the employer. And you know, there may be other matters like I find it's always advisable to be somehow aware and interested in all your staff. You know, the family matters. There may be issues in the family matters that are affecting their work input, and if you can somehow intervene there and help, and then you know that means that the loyalty of that staff person possibly increases, and he gets over that problem and can also, you know, keep on working through it. Teamwork, super important. So Jack Rees, in the last FIAC meeting in Chennai, or some meeting, he said that he was asking who is the most important person in your ADC team. And his answer to that was that they're the dog catchers, really. Because without having dog catchers, then who are we going to operate on? So the program is not going to be much of a success unless we have dog catchers. But every person's work input is really needed, and that has to be appreciated with compliments, with actually saying thank you for doing it when the work has been done well. And safety, of course, is really important. Obviously, all people working in ADC programs should have annual rabies vaccination. So the pre-exposure 3 shots, you know, if you have a new staff member coming in, and then followed by annual boosters. I think having defined duties and responsibilities is helpful. It also, to some extent, sort of increases the sort of self-esteem of your staff members, that you know that, okay, now you are the person, you are responsible for making the instruments because you are good in that and you know what instruments belong to the set, and then another person is doing something else. And then when you have defined duties and responsibilities, it is more easy to have people accountable for their duties. So then if in that instrument set, spay hook is missing or the scissors are missing, and it happens several times, then of course, instead of blaming everybody for that, you can ask that particular person whether there is some problem with the instruments, whether we are missing, whether we don't have enough instruments, you know, to make these sets properly, or if there's some other issue that should be noted. Standard protocols. Now, there are a lot of training programs now available in India for these different skills that are needed in ADC programs. We are doing one. We have one training center, but Mexican Borders is having another one in North India, and they are also working together with ACSI. But one problem with the charity ADC programs is that government takes a lot of the vets. After some years, charity vets will join the ADC program vets will join their government jobs, and then new vets have to come in. Now, if those first vets were trained by some of these training programs, or otherwise were good and following good practices, that should not go wasted when a new set of vets come. So the organization management has to be so aware of the different important parts of the ADC program and what belongs to good quality surgery, so that when you have a new vet coming in, you don't need to change everything just because the new vet doesn't know that but you can say that these are my house rules. Here, we use a new set of instruments for every job. We do change gloves between every job and things like that. And the new vet has to accept that. It has to be made that this is the way to go, and we can't change it just because a new person is coming in. And the soft skills, so we need, of course, the humane animal handlers who are able to catch dogs without harming them, and then veterinary doctors who can operate without hospital complications. And I mentioned there are a lot of training programs for that. We need to create for the sustainability of our staff. We need to create trusting, encouraging, motivating working atmosphere. So you may provide opportunities to proceed in the career, to learn more. You know, from a junior animal handler, you become an animal handler or senior animal handler, and when you are a senior animal handler, you have different duties and responsibilities, and most probably better salary than when you're newly joined. And so that the newly joined staff can see that if they are loyal and stay in the team, they have a chance to progress, and maybe there's a driver's license at some point, or some other further training, or some other opportunity, depending on what is appropriate in your situation. Same again for vets. Provide them chances to come to conferences, to speak in the public, to give press reports, and somehow become something else than just a staff vet who operates dogs because he's paid to do that. Like sort of empowerment of vets to also be part of the animal welfare movement. I had a couple of years back when we were starting our training center, I had vets coming in for interviews because we were searching for a president vet to work with us. And we found a really, really good one of the day from Delhi. But in the first set of people that came for the interview, there were two vets who had both worked in an APC setting before, and they were rather able to explain the surgery protocol they were using, and I was rather happy with that. But surprisingly, neither of these vets was able to explain why they had been doing this baby surgery. It seemed to me that they were simply operating because somebody paid them 70 rupees per dog. So we need to encourage our vets to understand, of course, more of why this work is being done, and so that they can also take an active stand in the public as they discuss with their colleagues or with any other members of the community. So I often use that example now in our training courses that as where I'm only talking to vets maybe, that as a professional vet, we do need to be more, we need to look beyond the individual dog and the payment we're getting from that dog. We need to understand the full concept. That's what our degree kind of, we are responsible for that sort of thing since we've been educated. We have to take a bigger stand in the society. And so if you compare, if you think of a situation, you have a construction site, and you have the chief engineer and architect who have designed it, they understand what kind of building it's going to be. But then you have a number of laborers, daily-based laborers, whose job is to carry sand from this place to that place and cement from here to there. And they get paid as per the number of baskets or as per the number of days they work. Now it's understandable that that person may not understand what kind of building it's going to be. It's sort of not necessarily his headache. But certainly a veterinarian has to have more understanding than just that, okay, I operate because I get 7 rupees a dog. So we need to provide, if we have vets in our team, we need to provide them chances to sort of we need to nurture and make them to take a bigger stand in the program than only the operations. And yeah, so respect and remember, and these are working quote that I mentioned already about the teamwork. I find it's really important. As a manager, if you're managing a program, you need to be present. You need to understand every tiny bit of the program, and you need to know how it should be done. So that's the only way you can supervise. And you can only supervise if you're present. If you're behind your desk somewhere far away, you can't really be present. And you need to be interested. You need to be aware. Obviously, also you need to understand the human limitations. Now, we can't save every animal. There are anesthesia is always some sort of a risk. So we may, unfortunately, sometimes we may have anesthesia deaths, which are not really anybody's fault. So we need to again understand these limitations and not unnecessarily accuse people for this or that mistake, which was not possibly their fault in the end. A lot of we may have dogs dying on the table simply because they had sort of subclinical disturbance starting up or something, and it was just that anesthesia was just not the right thing at that point to do, but nobody could have told that initially. So a lot of we need to understand we are all humans. Everybody makes mistakes, And of course, if it's a purposeful made mistake, we have to point that. But if it's just sort of human error, we have to be able to understand it. And then not to accuse without proper evidence. And very importantly, don't forget to have fun together. This is part of the team spirit thing that I find is important. We do with our team very often. You may have different things work for different groups, obviously. Depends on the kind of people you're working with. For us, going and doing whatever tribal dances is quite fun. And what we're going to do this December, our boys, our animal handlers and vet assistants are great volleyball players. So we are going to announce something which is hopefully going to become an annual event. It's an anti-rabies volleyball cup where they challenge our other local boys for a volleyball, and we have a cup, so that's something that all the doctors will bring their wives and families, and it will be a nice event. We haven't done that yet. We are planning now. It's going to be in December, and I'm very much looking forward to that. We've been to water parks sometimes, and done something like that. So something that is, you take your full team out from the normal working environment so that you can enjoy something. You can do something that everybody enjoys, regardless of what is their position in your ABC team. So then to facilities, can I have just a small check on the time? What's the time? What? 4:35, so 1 hour more, isn't it? Yeah, well then we should have the time. So, what I often tell that a good ABC team can work well in the simplest of facilities, but if you have a bad team, whatever laparoscopy, whatever fancy technique you would have available, the team will still perform badly. Okay, so always try to understand the minimum, what are the actual requirements to do good quality work, and what are those things that will make your work nicer, make it more comfortable, but it's not necessarily, it's not totally necessary. So where is a will, there is a way. Certain things cannot be compromised, and certain things can be improvised, and we need to understand also the difference between these. Now, these are things that I find cannot be compromised. We need to have a source of clean water. We need to have good light. We need to have electricity to run the autoclave. We should have easily cleanable tables, or at least cleanable tables. We would need to have a fridge to store the vaccine, or access to a fridge within a reasonable distance. We've also done camps in an army area in just totally intense, and we had an access in the army area to the fridge, so we would bring the amount of vaccine that we had for the day in a cooler box, but the stock was kept in a 10-minute drive away. So that's the minimum. And then you need to have some place to keep the dog pre-operatively and post-operatively. For us, sometimes that's just our catching vehicle. So on a field camp, we will just we catch the dogs, we bring them in, we stick up, and as we operate, we take them out from there. And then they will be recovering in some area, and then they will be released from there. And obviously, so transport for animals, it can be a pickup, it can be a rickshaw in some cases, and of course, a lot of owners bring their dogs in a rickshaw to our spay center. Then this is something we should never compromise, is the scrubbing of hands. Now, in our surgery training center, we have nice elbow tabs. Okay, obviously that is not available in every place, but every place you have access to water. So sometimes we have water problems. Sometimes our elbow tabs, they stay nicely, but no water comes because there's been some problem with the tap. So then we just take a jug and a bucket of water and we scrub outside. But you always, this is something that you cannot compromise. Good scrubbing of hands before putting on sterile gloves. You may have a problem of not enough kennel space, and that may be because of overcrowding. If that is the case, you need to think about your priorities. Are you mainly running an APC program, or is it sort of combined rescue come shelter? Which of course means that if you have a lot of cases that require a lot of further care, or are possibly never going to be revoked or released, then for sure, your space is slowly just building up, filling up with dogs, and the result is overcrowding. That will then result in a lot of disease transmission to potentially, those dogs that were healthy to start with. So it's a serious problem and needs addressing. One thing with the priorities then is the pregnant dogs. What do you do with pregnant dogs? I personally think that pregnant dogs should and can be operated for the simple reason that once you have, first of all, you can't always tell if your dog is pregnant. Then, second thing is that once you have brought the dogs into your facility, they have technically come under your care responsibility. You can't let them back on the roads to have the puppies there, because in my opinion, then you're abandoning those dogs. So you have to keep them. If you're not operating them, you have to keep them for that maybe a couple of days, weeks, some amount of time. So in India, where our resources are limited always, there is never enough money to do this work, as ideally as we would like to do. If you have earmarked, say AWBI earmarked funding for 100 dogs, this is just as a quick example, and if those 100 dogs would be females, easily 20% can be pregnant. If you choose not to operate the pregnant dogs, you end up having 120 new dogs, which you have to feed, vaccinate, and rehome. You can't let those puppies go on the streets. You have to rehome them. You have to spay them. And all that is great. We can do it if you have the money. But if you only have money for 100 dogs, then what are you going to do? And so this is the thing with India. I worked in a Humane Society cat shelter in Finland some years back, and we had a policy of not operating pregnant cats if we knew that they were pregnant. We have in Finland, we have an issue of this sort of summer cats. People take cats as they go on a summer holiday, and the family takes small kittens, and then they abandon them when the holiday is over, and then these cats are brought into the rescue shelter. Now, we are a small country with a population less than 6 million. Our cat population problem is also much smaller than what is in India. So it means that we have the rehoming potential to find homes for all these kittens, because it's still in a Finland scale it was kind of a problem, but it was a manageable problem, So we did not need to sterilize the pregnant cats because we knew we had enough volunteer fostering homes for these kittens. We didn't even need to keep them all in the shelter. We had people to take them and foster them, and then we would find homes for them. But here, often we don't have that. We don't have that rehoming potential. So then, if you don't operate the pregnant ones, if you let 120 puppies to be in your facility, certainly you have overcrowding. Certainly some of those, or most of those puppies will die because of different diseases, because of, again, of the overcrowding, especially if you try at the same time keep on doing the ABC program as well. Or it means that you just cut corners here and there and do bad quality surgery because you don't really have the money to take care of these dogs and to do the good surgery. Or you simply don't do any more surgery, which means that you're not controlling the population, which means that the public acceptance again will be less, and you may get questions from your donors or the municipality commissioners that, okay, you are doing this work, we let you to do it, but you're still, what is this? Your kennels are crowded with animals, and the problem on the streets has not solved. So that is one thing, and that can be resulting in the overcrowding. Then the number of extra days because of post-operative complications, that is also causing overcrowding. If our surgery standards are poor, and for that we need to keep the dogs for a number of days, that means that we can operate less dogs, we can bring less new dogs in, or if we still keep bringing more dogs in, we have the overcrowding problem. So again, the efficacy of our ABC program goes down. If the efficacy goes down, our public acceptance is going down because we are not actually getting the results. So sometimes, of course, the solution may also be that you just simply need more kennels, and in that situation, it's really important to think about it first. What kind of good design, drainage, safety. Again, these are issues that, as a manager, you also need to be aware of. The drainage, where the base goes, comfort, and also just simply to think about how many dogs we could just let go home the same day. The older dogs that we should be able to give them home the same day. And obviously for that we need to identify well on our dogs and release them to commands. Timing of cats in the surgery is one more thing that can cause overcrowding. Suppose you cats on a particular day or during a week, and you only operate on one day, which is I know that the reality in many places where you possibly only have a doctor coming in on Sunday. Some government doctor may only be coming on his day off, but you have dogs being caught the full week before. And this is of course something that is rather difficult to solve unless you're able to have a doctor in the team. But that's of course something that then can really causes overcrowding problems. So if you're having dogs that are unnecessary, many days into kennels before they can actually be operated. So if you can optimize the catching day to be just the day before the dogs are operated, or a maximum up to 2 days before the dogs are going to be operated, that will certainly lessen the burden in your kennels and reduce the overcrowding. Then we have the issue of the equipment. We have different dog catching equipment which are good. You have seen the Blue Cross stall where they have these nets. We also have our possibility to use sacks. Jack Reese, if you know Jack Reese and if you talk to him here, his team in Jaipur, they use sacks. We find that at least 4 nets per team, meaning 4 catchers per team is the minimum, because you need to sometimes that one person is not enough, because the dog will escape from that one person, and if there's nobody, so it's teamwork. It's like playing football or something, defend them, from different corners. Trap cages is another good option. We had Vital has made some trap cages, and we're using them in difficult terrains, in the sort of forest bush areas where it's difficult to go with dog catchers, and also where if you catch one dog, the other ones will escape. So setting these traps is another good option. And some ABC programs work so they only do with trap cages. I believe in Sikkim, that's how I understood from Chini. In Sikkim, the SARA program only uses trap cages now. The owner involvement, volunteering, is a quality control thing, and it's a wonderful thing to have owners bring their dogs, because we prevent a lot of unwanted puppies. Yes.
I have just one quick question about the trapping. If you're trapping in an area where there's wild animals, and you catch a wild animal by accident, do you think that then you'd be in trouble with the local government?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we'll be in trouble.
I would suggest in a wildlife area, you close the trap during evening. Just before you have to do it, because if you catch that part of a tiger or something, it's a scheduled one animal, you can be in serious trouble.
And how do you let it go?
How do you let it go? That's a bigger problem. Of course, you might find a cage in the park, but
So that is really an issue, and we have to be careful with that. And I don't know whether it would help them to also inform the forest department if you are using traps to catch dogs, then you also communicate with them.
Yeah, that might be
You need to mark your traps. Also, because sometimes people may find your trap and then they feel that there's a dog in the trap, I let it go. So to have them mark that these trap cages are used to catch dogs for spay neuter program, they are checked daily. And please don't, your phone number, and please call it,
small sign up.
Because that can also be a public acceptance problem. People will feel that these dogs are just going to die there. So many of you possibly have already seen this in the Blue Cross stand. I'm just going to show a couple of minutes of the use of these nets as for dog catching. These videos are from a rabies vaccination camp. So these dogs are not going to be transported into a vehicle. We won't see that because we're just catching and giving a vaccination. But it just shows how nets are used. Yeah, yeah. So this is some of these, like you said, the last ones were owner dogs. They were very much pet dogs, but you all are very aware of that. There are a lot of pet dogs the owners are not able to control even for one injection. So then, and those dogs also the owners do not go through the trouble to take them to some dispensary for vaccination. We have to go there. That is just how it has to happen, especially in the beginning of sort of an educational process of, you know, of teaching people the importance of all this. So anyway, more of this video will be available. This full video is available, will be available if somebody is interested. I can send afterwards. 16. So I can send it to everyone to have this video there. There's half an hour of the dog catching, and again there is also one demonstration spaying research from our So the variolas are being known over and commons, of course. Those are not welfare friendly ways of catching at all, and they should not be used. Now then, the equipment that you have, there is an AWPI grant. I mentioned in the initial brief, and we read that I'm not really going to, the funding, like where and how to apply funding, because that's another big issue. But AWPI does have a grant for ambulances or like animal. So we had our pickup is from that brand. So we use it for transporting the dogs for surgery, but we also use it to transport all our equipment to a field surgical unit. Sometimes we go to other places, help other organizations, or we go to other contracts that may give us like a school room like this, okay, to operate. And we bring everything. We bring autoclave, we bring the surgical tables, we bring all the medicines, we bring everything. And so we use that also for that. So if you're having that sort of, if you're applying a grant from the AWPI for the vehicle, then think of these options. So ours is rather high as well. We can also transport a horse in it. So the body is built very high. So it should be safe, easy to operate, designed to ensure good ventilation and protect from extreme heat. Sometimes you may need to stop and throw water at the dogs, just to keep them cool, because heat stroke is a serious risk in warmer climates. And so it can also be used to transport equipment for the field surgery units. And then of course after unloading it will be used to bring dogs in. Then this is the must, okay? The autoclave. What you also need to know is who is in charge of this. Like I mentioned, in a good well-functioning agency program, you have defined duties and responsibilities. So some person is in charge of using it. However, you also need to be aware like who actually knows how to use it. Okay, it's hopefully the same person who is in charge of using it. Who actually uses it. Okay, that is also hopefully the same person, but there may be differences, and if you don't look at that matter, you will not know. Okay, and how it is used. And then what happens after the autoclaving process? I've heard of a number of stories where, okay, autoclave is used and the manager of the program is saying, yes, we are using autoclave. But then when you go and see, an assistant is picking up the instruments with bare hands and putting them on a table. So that was just waste of electricity, because obviously the instruments are not anymore sterile. So these are all things that we have to be aware of. And this is just a long list, don't bother reading it. Really, I just want to raise the question, among the ones who there are doctors, there are agency program managers, how many of you, hand in your heart, actually knows how to use an autoclave? Okay? Because, and that's, so this is just the way our autoclave works. And the thing that I wanted you to pay attention to it is that it needs to reach a certain pressure, 50 psi. Okay, I'm not a physics, so I don't know but to reach this pressure in our system takes about 20 minutes. But only after reaching this pressure, we have to wait 25 minutes. Okay, so it's not from the beginning, it's after reaching, and that may, how long time it takes to reach that pressure may vary from autoclave to autoclave. And after this, so after we reach that pressure, we wait for 25 minutes, then we switch switch off, and then we still need to do all this, raising the, boosting the vacuum so we can we get the steam up and all that. So overall, it will take close to an hour to run the full in our system. Okay. So this is what you have to be aware of when you go home. If you didn't know this, how it works in our system, please check how it actually goes. Then obviously instruments, we do have to have one set with all. Okay, they have to be scrubbed, rinsed, dried, packed, and automated again before they are able to be used for another job. One set is about approximately 2,800, depending on whether you want Alice corsets, which are mainly used for flat stay, whether you want them or not. And that includes drapes as well. Drapes which can be just done by local tailors. And we do need to, I find yesterday we had this presentation by that doctor for laparoscopy. So that's a beautiful thing, it's a beautiful technique. But I find it somewhat unrealistic in the APC program because I know that a lot of people are not having enough instruments and they're considering that it's too much big of an investment to have so many instrument sets. So if you can't afford 2,800 per set, then where comes 12 lakhs for a laparoscopy? But we have to, whether it's a laparoscopy or whether it's several sets of instruments, we need to accept the initial investment, and it will bring savings in the long term. And obviously we need to appreciate, even if it's just the plain normal instruments, we need to take care of them. We've had sometimes vets who come for our courses, they say that, oh, where do you buy these instruments? They're such good quality. We only have very rusted instruments in our clinic. Well, I'm sure any instrument will rust if it's not taken care of well, So they have to be scrubbed, rinsed, dried immediately after the surgery, and that has to be done daily. I was lucky to spend a week in the Veterinary College of Nepal in September in the surgery department. I did a course there. I was invited by the head of the surgery department of the college. But that college is suffering because Nepal is a much poorer country than India, obviously, and they have a lot of problems there. And obviously there was not much staff. But the head of the surgery department, Professor Manoj Jha, was very, he knew the value of these instruments because they are his tools to make it work. So after the surgery, he himself took the bloody drapes and the instruments and went to the small washing room and started drubbing them. That was the head of the department of surgery. He did it himself because if he doesn't do that, if there's nobody else to do that, then in the end he can't do his work well. So as veterinarians, we need to understand. It's great if we have good, well-working staff to help us in certain things. But in the end, it's us vets who cannot perform well if our tools are not kept correctly. So we do need to have a responsibility for that as well, and at least make sure our assistants will do that. Now I just show one packing video, to show an idea of this instrument packing, because besides of the autoclave, the instruments have to be packed in a separate bag so that you can maintain them. They can be sterile. the window is right under, so that we can easily place it on the exact side and unfold it open without touching the dog. So all that is also, to do that, correctly makes again a big difference of how easy it is to operate the hole. How well the humanity accepts this. Saying this tucking tray, the way it's folded, means that it can be opened up very easily without touching anything. And this is where you have to be very careful always. Indicator tape tells that the autoclave has reached that 50 psi pressure. Unfortunately, the indicator tape does not tell. Tape does not tell whether the pressure has been maintained for that 25 minutes. So if you have power cuts, then that can be a problem. But it only tells that pressure has been achieved. Yeah, so then about the funds, that can be a lot of resources. Funds, of course, is a one constant problem for everybody. I understand that. There are unfortunately no easy answers to that. However, I think it was a good thing what Amala yesterday mentioned, that the AWPI money really cannot be the sole funding that you rely your program on, because it always comes some 3 years behind. And in the meanwhile, you have to keep on operating. So generating funds from other sources is really necessary, and there, of course, depending on your situation, you may have different opportunities for that. Obviously, dog owners, according to their capacity, should pay for their. I don't think all owner dogs should be done totally free. But then again, where you make the line, that may that in different areas you may have different systems for that, in different programs. What we do is that I find that if a person comes by car, if it has a pedigree dog, or if I can speak about English with the person, the owner, then I will politely tell that if they would like to contribute fully for the materials and medicines of that operation. Often we consider 500 as an absolute minimum for that kind of people. Often they give 1,000, some give 2,000. So that's fine. And then there are plenty of dog owners who obviously cannot afford that, and then we don't ask anything, or if they give 20 rupees afterwards, we're happy with that, and we say thank you. But we have to operate owner dogs, even whatever rich people's dogs, but it doesn't need to be free. We can work out schemes for that, depending on your situation. Rotarians can have been supporting some agency programs in certain places, and of course we may have different fundraising events, or overseas funding if we have FCRA. But plenty of other possibilities as well. It is not easy for sure. However, in all cases, obviously always ensure that all the transparency, if you're using the money effectively, you report in time what was required for reporting, and then order supplies from wholesalers. Again, to save money, don't think you have to buy from your local medical shop. I'm saying 300 rupees per wire. That's not realistic. You order from wholesaler. My wholesaler rate for white drill 90 centimeter piece of white drill I'm using for female dogs is 94 rupees a piece. So try to get a kind of deals with the wholesalers in your locality, or not in your locality. You can even order obviously phone and courier order from even rather far away. So don't think everything has to come from the local medical shop, and also to understand what drugs are sensible and what are not. Often there are all kinds of tonics and also the vitamins that are considered as some sort of an essential part, but obviously they're not if you're mainly running an APC center. So you mainly need the anesthetics and the vaccine, and not much more than that. However, one option, if you don't have much funding to run an ABC program effectively, one thing you could consider is to start with do plain mass rabies vaccination program. It's cheaper. You don't need much of overheads, You can get good coverage, publicity, if you go to correct areas, and educational impact. This kind of what the video was about the dog catching. Just going and catching dogs. You can do door-to-door dog vaccination without even these catching equipment. We had our past resident vet and our accountant, who was a desktop person. He and our past resident vet, they did a door-to-door rabies vaccination drive last year. They visited small towns and they worked together with some smaller organizations. And in 6 days of time, they vaccinated 400 dogs without any dog catching equipment. This is simply going in villages, door to door, vaccinating those dogs that would otherwise not get vaccinated because the owners don't have the transport. They want to take a dog. Free roaming pet dog will not be easy to carry, or you don't walk in a lead to go into any government hospital. So the vaccination has to come to those people. So if you can start with that, if you don't have the funds to for it, or even as a sort of expand your, you may be doing ABS work already, then to expand your activity, you can consider that if you don't have the funds to expand the ABS as such. So there are a lot of training programs that are available at the moment. And so try to make use of them, whichever is nearest or somehow more convenient. Ours is in the Nilgiris, Tamil Nadu. But then Mexican borders, they have in Delhi, they have in Jaipur, and they have in Sikkim. And they're working together against society with resources that you or your vets should have access to. Now, one fact that I want to share, because I want to emphasize this very much, in this technical know-how matter, is that spay neuter surgery is classified internationally. This is this is not my invention. This is globally accepted in the medical community and veterinary medical community. That spay neuter surgery is classified as clean inside surgery, and in the clean inside surgery, the postoperative infection rate without antibiotics, should not exceed actually 3.5%. So it's from 0 to 3.5%, which is an acceptable level of postoperative infections in clean inside surgery like spay neuter. It means that out of 100 dogs that you operate, if regularly more than 4 require postoperative antibiotics, then there is scope for improvement. So responsible use of antibiotics is something that we emphasize a lot in our training courses because of the global hazard of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is a big issue in India, it's a big issue in many other countries, worldwide. And we should always avoid unnecessary use of antibiotics. So using antibiotics does not excuse you for doing bad antibiotic surgery and not paying attention to the use sterile gloves and keeping your hands sterile and all that. So spay neuter surgeries in clean inside surgery category, they do not require postoperative antibiotics when performed properly. And I feel that if we are taking dogs, we are doing this intervention, we should not do it improperly. We should only do it properly. There is no other way to do it properly. So I'm just at this point. What's the time now? What? 10 minutes. So where I am, 27. Okay, I'll show the video to the end. If we don't have results, if that is your main problem, you don't know how to report them, maybe you're doing too randomly, you're not focused in one area at a time, so you don't really see any improvement, then it depends, okay, what kind of initial assessment you made. Did you have any dog census or indicator counts? Again, Jack Reese is a person who has a lot of experience in this. But in short, dog census or indicator count is a good thing to start with, so you have some baseline data to which to compare as your program goes on. Indicator count means that you walk a certain area, you walk a certain route, and you count all the dogs that you see. And then you repeat the same route, every 6 months or every once a year. And you see if you see less dogs. So it's an indicator. It doesn't tell anything about the actual dog population. It indicates that the population is decreasing if you see less dogs on every round. Dog census involves more of, taking a map of your area, dividing it into smaller parts, then taking a random sample of those smaller, like boards or blocks. Yeah, and then you count every dog on those areas that you randomly selected, and then you multiply according to how many blocks you have divided your area, and you get an idea of the census. Human rabies incidence is something that is of course a very big indicator if a human rabies incidence is going down. So to have a good data of that in the beginning, and then keep comparing that afterwards. So these are figures that solid figures that are really good to report, to use in your reports. And then of course, you may have some idea of the number of rescue puppies and adoptions, but these are a little bit more vague figures. The indicator counts and human rabies incidents are quite solid figures, and they are easily accepted by authorities. But the number of adoptions or rescues is not something that your municipal authorities may not have, they don't have understanding of that. But human rabies incidents is something else. Then if you do have a suspected rabies case, always send the sample for diagnosis. That again provides you more solid data to prove that what you're doing is for good. So if you suspect a dog from rabies, euthanize it. Don't let it die by itself because it's a horrible death. Euthanize it and send the sample. We are sending to Chennai from Uti. You may be sending to different places depending where you are. So always find out what is the nearest laboratory where you can send the sample and get connected. So talk with the person who is in charge there for analyzing these samples, so that when you have the situation, you know who to refer to. And of course, you can have about rabies incidents of humans. You can have reports from human hospitals. You can use the Right to Information Act and try to establish contacts. We are having a cancer institute in the Ilona office in our locality. So I'm rather good friends with the director there, and we often take our participating vets to a visit there, or Dr. Serka, the director, comes and talks about human rabies to our participants. Lack of welfare is a big issue, of course, and how to assess that. We have the 5 freedoms as a guideline, and everybody is well aware of that, so we don't go more to that. Now, we may have pre-surgery mortality as a sign of lack of welfare. That's what maybe because injuries in transport, the catching technique may be banned, the vehicle design may be banned, the heat stroke may affect, or the catching technique. I know some places they use the wire lasso and then they sort of keep the dogs in the cage, sort of partly make them slightly unconscious, and then they throw them into the vehicle. Well, obviously there are a lot of deaths in that sort of operation. Then what is your maximum capacity of the vehicle? Heat stroke can happen also if you load too much. Even if you have a perfect design of the vehicle, if you load too much, that creates a problem. Or if your transport time is very long, then you need to think of altering or pulling down the animals somehow during that time. Then you may have separate cages. We don't have, but I find it's a good thing that you have. Possibly have separate cage or some way to isolate, say, a suspected rabies dog or a very aggressive dog, or a female dog that's on heat. You don't want to have that together with the males, and they're all going to gang rape that poor dog, on the way to the surgery. So that's something that you may consider. And then of course you have diseases, and some can, a dog that is already suffering from parvo has a lower immunity, possibly a very weak condition. Combine that with a long transport time and overcrowding vehicles, the dog may die in the vehicle just because of the combination of these different factors. Pain management, really important. I'll talk more and more about pain management. So multimodal anesthesia is what is really important, that we have to use different kinds of analgesic drugs that block the pain pathway in different stages, and we always give that before the painful stimulus of surgery, so that we prevent the pain impulse from reaching the brain. And also you need to remember that not all anesthetics are analgesics. We have, like ketamine is a good analgesic, it also provides pain relief, but many other anesthetics do not. Pain delays wound healing. It makes the hospitalization time longer. Overcrowding, infectious diseases, transmission pressure, all those things I went through. Self-mutilation can cause complications if the dogs are in pain, they'll start licking and biting their wounds, and you will have complications. Pain also increases stress response, which then further decreases the efficacy of the immune system, and then we don't get a good response to the vaccine. We may post-operative mortality in terms of hypothermia. So always, if we are working in a rather cold climate, so we really need to think about this all the time. You always have something over your surgery table, even in a hot climate. Never have a dog on a steel table, plain steel table. Always a piece of newspaper or some rubber matting, something to isolate the dog from the very cold steel. You may have a post-operative mortality because of bleeding, and that is obviously a question of the competence of the surgeon, because we should not have dogs die because of bleeding. Peritonitis, tooth breakdown, this thing of blood falling out, these are all signs of very bad surgery. And then you need to check all the protocols and how exactly everything is being done. The cause of a surgical wound infection is always at the time of the surgery. It's not because the kennels are dirty, this and that afterwards. Those things may aggravate the problem. The actual cause of surgical wound infection is always at the time of the surgery. And in that way, we have all the means to prevent that. I mentioned this in other titles also already, post-operative mortality. Maybe also because we are having other infectious diseases which we unfortunately don't have idea of when we bring in the animals. And then the other problems is overcrowding and hospitalization are just making things worse. Any questions?
5 minutes, yeah.
5 minutes, yeah. So you want to have so questions, or I have one intradermal suturing video and one fixing of an IV catheter related to the anesthesia monitoring. If anybody has questions, I think we can prioritize that.
Good question. On washing, scrubbing up, the water that comes out of the tap, how do you know it's going to be clean enough?
It's clean enough. And obviously then we also use a scrubbing soap solution, like a chlorhexidine soap. So, that is enough. And it's the mechanism, it's a combination of obviously mechanical brushing. So we use a system where you have 10 strokes of each side of, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. With the chlorhexidine soap, okay? You do all surfaces of your hands and arms. So that removes the transit bacteria. It doesn't sterilize your skin. It's not meant to sterilize your skin. It removes the transit bacteria. Then we apply, then you dry your hands with a sterile towel. If you don't have sterile towels, it's air dry. And then you spray surgical spray. Then only you put on the sterile gloves. And that in a way that you don't touch actually the gloves, because the gloves are not magically sterile. They're only sterile if we don't let them touch anywhere. And then using sterile gloves and touching here and there is a lot of waste of money, because then if you add asphalt, it's using non-sterile gloves. You're not going to keep them sterile. And then you should not do it.
How you handle feral dogs is coming in the midnight and making problems in the street? Whether they are catching
The trap cage is a good option for catching that kind of dogs. If you can identify the localities where some dumping yards or something, where these kind of dogs are hanging around at night time. If you can use trap cages in those areas, I think that is the best solution for those dogs to catch them. And then operate them and release back. Yes.
When you operate in the belly areas, we were showing like during the medical that you were operating.
Yeah.
You keep the dog for post-operative.
In those kind of camps, we've done it in a tribal village, for example, where all the dogs belong to that community. So we just let them go with their owners. But that was too far for those owners to actually, and they don't have vehicles to bring them to us. So we ventilated. In other situations, we may be given from the Panchayat may have given us a couple of rooms in our old abandoned school, for example, as a bedding home. So we would be having one room like this to operate and another room like this to keep the dogs. And I just want to emphasize the importance of doing such a beautiful surgery, that then these dogs are kept in this and they're checked, the day after, and they can be released rather fast. So they don't. So it can be any kind of room facility on these sort of field camps that we use, just where we can keep it securely.
In case you keep them in cage.
No, not in a cage. But they would be in a room like this. Yeah. In our place, we have individual kennels, like to fit 2 or 3 dogs per kennel. But on these field camps, we may just use a room like this. Yes.
Has there been trials or have there been research on what kind of success rate we have? Because my fear or my worry is that let's say we sterilize 70-80% of the dogs.
Yeah.
There are going to be certain dogs that always hide away and will not easy to catch. Won't those even 5% dogs left again breed and wash down our efforts? Is that something
Well,
that
it's
happens? What is the
yeah, it is. First of all, this is a constant process. Okay, you start getting good sustainable impact when you reach 70%. But obviously, you should not stop the work there. You keep on going. But if you randomly do, you will not get any kind of success anywhere. But if you focus and get 70%, you start getting results. But you still have to keep going. Still, and as we keep going, the educational message to the owners increases. You know, the owners become more aware that they have to have their dogs fed. That will then slowly increase the ratio. You know, it will change the ratio between you operating owner dogs and unknown dogs. You're operating, you know, after you've been doing this for maybe 50 years, so you're operating more owner dogs, which is great, and less ownerless dogs because simply there are less. But the process has to go on.
My question is, are there places where actually results have been seen?
Yeah, Jack, do you know Jack Rees from Jaipur? He was just having a session. Jack Rees from Helping Suffering, Jaipur, has scientific publications.
Okay.
One of them is from 2006. It's in Vet Report. If you email me, I'll send it to you. But he has many others after that. So he has like a scientifically reviewed in a scientific journals. He has shown the reduction of dog population in Jaipur with the Avis program.
That's
So
what
it
is
is.
in the journal and it is reviewed by someone and
Yes,
goes through
yeah.
a proper process. It's
Yeah.
not just a claim of an NGO.
Yeah, no. There are proper articles that you either you ask him or you talk to me. I'll send them to you. Yes.
Basically, it's a concept in public health. It is a concept in public health. You should control 70% of the population. Suppose you vaccinate them or you sterilize them, it's equal to 100% that you are controlling the problem or the disease. It's a concept in public health. Suppose
The rabies problem.
in rabies, if you are able to sterilize 70% of the population, as per public health concept, it is equal to 100%. Because
Yeah.
you cannot completely manage the problem.
Yeah.
Similarly, is the case of rabies also. If you
Yes.
are able to vaccinate 70% of the population, that means it is equal to 100%. We have achieved.
Yeah.
It's a concept in public health.
Yeah, now if 70% of us are vaccinated against rabies and we get a rabies dog coming into this room, it's much less likely that the dog will find a person who is not vaccinated. It's most likely to find somebody who's vaccinated and then the disease transmission stops there. But if none of us is vaccinated, then
And it takes almost 6 to 7 years to reach the population.
Yeah.
On a sustainable basis.
Yeah. It needs a long-term commitment. There are vaccines that protect for 3 years. However, we always should, whenever we talk to people, owners, anybody, we should always emphasize the annual rabies vaccination need because owners also will not be able to know what vaccine was used or not. You know, so even if you have vaccinated this particular dog with a 3-year vaccine, just vaccinate next year. You know, that's what it is. Now, the average lifespan of the street dog is up to 5 years average. You know, so if we can effectively cover 70% of our given population, even the fact that if the protection is for 3 years, and at the same time we keep on vaccinating, we keep on doing more spay-neutral vaccination, and we keep vaccinating owner dogs more and more, and those we can do annually as well. The protection that this gives is, to reach the fact that we can reach 70%, even if not all dogs get it every year, but we get the herd immunity because there are more and more owner dogs that are getting vaccinated every year. Of course, you can also do annual rabies vaccination campaigns for the ownerless dogs as well. We can do a rabies vaccination month, which is the September month, which is now being implemented in Sikkim, for example. All dogs are vaccinated. Ownerless, owner, all dogs are vaccinated every September. All government vets are involved with that. So massive annual rabies vaccination campaigns should take place. But the fact that we cannot vaccinate every dog 100% again should not make us, we don't know to do that, because just the overall coverage is what is important. And the population. way to do it. Yeah.